If they are not safe in South Africa, they must caution them to go and hop to the next country or come back home. Don't caution them to stay here. We don't want your citizens anymore.
In 1963, leaders from across Africa gathered in Addis Ababa with a dream.
Where are you from? Yes. Where? Yes. Huh? Yes. Yes. So what are you doing here? Because we've been calling for you guys to leave the country. Why are you still here?
I was not to school for children.
No, my brother. No. Please respect what we are saying and don't try and oppose what we are doing. Don't listen to the government. Don't listen to the police. Don't listen to anyone. Just listen to us. We are saying this peacefully. Please go to your country. 30 June is the deadline, but it's not like you must leave on the 30th of June.
Yes.
Don't leave on the 30th of June. Leave now, because the 30th of June, I can't control people of South Africa. All right, let's do the right thing. Respect our country, respect us.
A dream that Africa will never again be divided by colonial borders, tribal divisions, or foreign interest. A dream that Africans will see themselves as one people with a shared identity and destiny.
And journalists are not covering these stories because the stories that they want to cover are the stories that they think will make us look bad to the rest of the world. Unfortunately, we're at a time where the rest of the world is not living in South Africa. The rest of the world is not South Africa or South Africans. Therefore, if South Africans have decided that they've had enough, then we don't need to answer to anyone about that. So they can continue and call us whatever they want to call us. At the end of the day, we've made a decision as a country. It's not about Jacinta. Because even if I keep quiet for the next 2 weeks, this that you're seeing now is not going to stop anymore. South Africans are fed up.
This dream gave birth to something called the Organization of African Unity, the predecessor of today's African Union. Men like Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Jomo Kenyatta, Kenneth Kaunda, and many others believed that political independence was only the first step into Africa realizing itself. The bigger dream for all these leaders was one thing, that Africa becomes united. They were dreaming of African unity. But right now, why are fellow Africans turning against fellow Africans? It's been more than 60 years and we are finding ourselves in this difficult scenario with whatever is happening in South Africa. Why are migrants from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Somalia, Congo, Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, and other African countries increasingly finding themselves targeted in South Africa? Why does a continent that once united against colonialism struggle to unite against poverty, unemployment, and inequality? And perhaps the most uncomfortable question of all is, has Pan-Africanism failed, or have we failed Pan-Africanism? Today, we'll explore the history, the politics, the economics, and the future of African unity. This is not a conversation about blaming South Africans. It is a conversation about understanding one of the greatest challenges facing modern Africa. Many younger Africans do not fully appreciate how much support South Africa's liberation struggle received from the rest of the continent. If you go to the books of history, you will realize that South Africa was the last country, if I'm not wrong, among the last countries to get independence during that time. And during apartheid, African countries provided sanctuaries, they provided training camps, they provided diplomatic support and financial assistance to the South African liberation movement under Nelson Mandela. Countries like Tanzania, Zambia, Angola, Mozambique, Nigeria, and many others became bases for anti-apartheid activities. But The struggle against apartheid was not just viewed as a South African problem. The struggle against apartheid was viewed as an African struggle. It was not just a South Africa's problem, it was an African problem. Former South African leaders, including Nelson Mandela, repeatedly acknowledged the role that African countries played in helping dismantle apartheid in South Africa. Without the support, the liberation struggle would have been far more difficult than it could have been. And when the question that I tend to ask a lot of people is, when African countries supported South Africa during apartheid, what vision of Africa's solidarity existed at the time? Because when we talk of March South Africa, which is happening today, being the 30th of June, we ask ourselves whether we were helping each other to become more united, or we were just in a scenario that I needed you at this time and currently I don't need you. Apartheid ended in 1994, and when apartheid ended, South Africa represented hope. Because, during the colonial times, when Europeans spent a lot of time in your country, they did a lot. So let me use an example in Kenya. As we got independence in 1964, South Africa got independence in 1994. So the difference between the two is that as we got in 64, they got in 94. So a difference of approximately 30 years of South Africa being under the rule of the Europeans. And when apartheid is ending in 1994, South Africa possessed Africa's most industrialized economy. It possessed advanced infrastructure. It possessed strong institutions. It possessed greater economic opportunities than many neighboring states, because as I tell you that when a European country will take a lot of time in your state or in your nation, they will do a lot because they're the ones ruling at that time. So that is how the coinage of the word the United States of Africa, being termed as South Africa, came to be, because they were sort of more developed compared to other African countries. Naturally, when a country is well developed, migrants will start coming in. Some are fleeing conflict in their countries, others are seeking opportunities because these are countries that has developed, and others simply wanted a better life compared to the countries they are coming from. Because if countries that got independence in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 70s, these are countries that now are trying to build themselves under their own regime. But during these times, South Africa is under the regime of a European. So this European is the one making developments from their country. They're trying to make their colony look better. And for many Africans, South Africa became the continent's economic magnet because of the stability of the economy that it had built from 60s to 90s when they are chasing away the Europeans. Yet the post-apartheid dream has come to encounter harsh realities. South Africa remains one of the world's most unequal society. Despite political freedom, economic inequality remains deeply entrenched. You see, in South Africa, what we tend to believe as other African people is that in South Africa, they are living a better life. But you see, in South Africa, many communities continue to struggle with unemployment. They continue to struggle with poverty. They continue to struggle with crime, housing shortages, and inadequate service delivery. In one of the videos that I was listening to, I think it's called Nadaba. Nadaba says that they're trying to help the government run the country.
Let everybody go out. Let us, as South African, sort out our borders. Maybe give us 6 months. Sort out our borders, correct the systems, and then everybody can come out. Everyone is welcome, so that everyone can come in. But let us correct the system. Let us help the government. The government doesn't have resources. These men, if they can do this, they can help the government in the borders. They can help the government in the harbor, because the police can't deal with 1,000 containers in the harbor. They can't deal with the people that are coming through the sea with the boat, because we don't have the navy. We don't have the soldiers in the sea. We don't have the police in the sea. We don't have the resources. We have a gate, but we don't have a fence.
Recent studies and analysis consistently identify unemployment, inequality, and economic insecurity as key drivers of anti-immigrant sentiment in South Africa currently. Critics of the anti-migrant movements argue that migrants are often scapegoated for structural economic problems rather than being the root cause of those problems. Now, recent studies and analysis consistently identify unemployment, inequality, and economic insecurity as key drivers of anti-immigrant sentiment in South Africa. But the critics of the anti-migrant movements argue that migrants are often scapegoated for structural economic problems rather than being the root cause of those problems. When people feel left behind economically, they begin searching for someone to blame. That is a fact. And historically, immigrants are often becoming convenient targets when such things arise. And this is not unique in South Africa. It has happened in Europe, it has happened in America, and now it's happening in parts of Africa. And the question we tend to ask ourselves is, why do economic frustrations often transform into anti-immigrant politics? Now, for us to understand the current moment, we must understand the movement called Operation Dudulla. Now, Dudulla roughly translates to push out or force out. And this movement emerged after the unrest of 2021 and gained support by arguing that foreign nationals were taking jobs, overwhelming public services, and contributing to crime. Its rhetoric resonated particularly among frustrated youth facing unemployment and economic hardship. Supporters argue that they are defending South Africans. Critics argue they are promoting xenophobia. Now, what makes this movement significant is that it transformed frustrations about governance and economic opportunity into a campaign directed to fellow Africans. And the question literally becomes, why are ordinary citizens directing their anger towards migrants rather than the political system? If you study very well, in each and every country there are migrants from other countries, and if we can say in Kenya, sort of Indians are running a couple of businesses and they have employed people. So to some extent, the migrants who are creative and have money from their countries set up businesses and create employment for people. But when it comes to people from this country starting to blame the migrants for taking their job opportunities, you tend to ask yourself if whether the problem is the people who come into the country or the problem is literally the political system. And if the problem is the political system, then we should address the problem rather than shifting the blame to someone else. Many scholars argue that xenophobia is often a symptom rather than the disease itself. The deeper issues include youth unemployment, slow economic growth, corruption, inequality, weak public trust in institutions, among many things. And some researchers argue that movements such as Operation Dudulla flourish where citizens feel institutions are failing to address their concerns. And I usually say there is nothing as dangerous as selling hope to a hopeless generation. Could it be that migrants have become symbols of frustrations that have little to do with migrants themselves? Okay. And yesterday I was asking a friend of mine a questions. Are migrants being blamed for failures that should be attributed to institutions and leadership? Because if we tend to look in the growth of a country, these migrants who come in and create opportunities, they're literally building the economy of that country. So should we be blaming the migrants? Like in Kenya, should we blame the Burundians who come here and offer services at a cheaper price? Should we blame the Ugandans, the Rwandese who come here to offer services at a cheaper price? But when I tend to gauge into the two, for instance, our currency as Kenya, for instance, I was negotiating with a Tanzanian friend, and she was telling me that our 1,000 shillings in Kenya is equivalent to 20,000 in Tanzania. So if these people are coming, whether they earn 500 or 1,000, they're still okay because it's a lot of money in their currency. So is the problem the migrants who come to offer services, or is the problem the system? And this is where the story becomes bigger than South Africa itself. Pan-Africanism was built on the belief that Africans share common interests and common struggles. It inspired liberation movements across the continent that helped lead the creation of the Organization of African Unity in 1963. And Today, we see tension between Pan-African ideals and the rising of nationalism. Many citizens increasingly identify first as South Africans, as a Kenyan, as a Nigerian, as a Ghanaian, before identifying as an African. The question is, can Pan-Africanism survive when economic insecurity encourages people to prioritize nationality over continental solidarity? Have you ever thought if people could be going somewhere, if I could go to US and someone asks me, where are you from? And I boldly tell them, you know what, I'm an African. Specifically, I come from Kenya. But what happens is I'm a Kenyan from Africa. Two different things. And do we young Africans still believe in African unity? That's another question that I tend to ask myself a lot of time. Did Pan-Africanism remain an elite political project rather than becoming a people's movement? Because with everything happening in South Africa, the African Union has done nothing, has spoken nothing about it. It's just silent. And this is a body that should be uniting all Africans. And I think here is where the question on Pan-Africanism comes in, because if the body that is to speak on behalf of Africans is silent on a matter that is happening within Africa, then it tends to raise a question of doubt on the terms of African unity. And there is literally another uncomfortable reality. In conversations across Africa, many people point to sporting events as evidence of damaged relationships, because the sports, music, drama and all these are things that bring people together. But when South African teams compete internationally, some Africans openly support the opponents. Now, this sentiment is often linked to perceptions of xenophobia and anti-African attitudes within South Africa, because whether fair or unfair, it demonstrates the erosion of solidarity. When we are playing the World Cup in USA and South Africa is playing against Mexico, and 90% of the African continent is supporting Mexico, where is solidarity in that? You see, the deeper issue here is not football. The deeper issue is trust. And when trust breaks down, unity becomes difficult. I want to ask a question that maybe will give us a thought to what is happening in South Africa. Because today, it's literally that day that people are being asked to go back to their country. They are saying that let them go, let us sort our issues within the borders, then they can come back. But let me ask you guys a question. If every country in Africa decides that each and every citizen who is not from that country should go back to their country, we sort our issues, then they can come back. Are we helping ourselves? For instance, in Kenya, people believe that the government has failed. Okay? If Kenyans decide that, you know what, till we sort out our issues, if you are not a Kenyan, leave Kenya, will we be helping the economy of Kenya or will we be hurting the economy of Kenya? And you see, perhaps the greatest threat facing Africa today is not even external. It's not France, it's not Macron and his people, it's not Trump and his people. Perhaps the biggest threat facing Africa is internal fragmentation. The dream of Pan-Africanism was never simply about borders, it is about solidarity. And it was about recognizing that our destinies as Africans are connected. But the irony is very painful. A continent that united against colonialism now struggles to unite against poverty. A continent that once fought apartheid together now finds itself divided by nationality. And when I look at the ideals of the late Muammar Gaddafi, I feel like as Africans, we are failing at a point. The question before us is not whether Africa can unite. The question is whether Africans still believe in unity that is worth fighting for. Because if you cannot trust each other, if you cannot trade with one another, if you cannot move freely among one another, the dream of African unity remains incomplete. And whatever is happening in South Africa tends to come in at a very, very funny time, because it's a time that most of African countries have opened their borders to fellow Africans. When you travel to Togo, you don't need a visa. When you come to Kenya, you don't need a visa. When you go to, I think, very many countries in Africa, you don't need visas. And it's at this time that someone is rising up in South Africa to tell the South Africans that we should not allow immigrants to come into our country. When the likes of Ibrahim Traore have really fought to see to it that Africa opens its borders to fellow Africans to build trade. So how are we going to trade with each other if we're going to send immigrants who are from other countries out of our own countries? And perhaps the future of Africa depends on whether these generations chooses fear or chooses solidarity. So this is just my take. South Africa should remember that their independence was not fought by them themselves. It was conjointly fought for by each and every African country.